Welcome to Safe Doesn't Scale. I'm your host, David Walsh, founder of Limelight. This show is for marketing and growth leaders with a chip on their shoulder who are tired of playing it safe. I'm excited today. I've got Meryoli used to work at Apollo and Chili Piper and some incredible companies. She is an expert at social media management. Meryoli, thanks for joining us.
Hi, I'm very excited to be here.
Well, we've got a lot to chat about. I think the first thing, let's kick it off. You went all in on your own consultancy business. Tell us about it. How's it going?
Yeah, I think that after a while working for different companies, I was able to gather some insights. And I think I've seen the patterns of, like you mentioned, great companies who did amazing work when it comes to their marketing. So now I'm just like trying to get to, smaller companies and companies that are getting started and set the foundation of what could be and will be in the future a good marketing strategy with a human approach to things. I think that's what really represents my work in the last 6 years in this industry, is that it's always been human and looking for the connections. It's more than thinking of social media as just a channel and more as a distribution place where, that human thought, that human approach is really seen by the customers. And that's how we build the communities. And in the end, we build the customer base.
It's interesting. Obviously, I'm in B2B marketing and I sell to a lot of B2B marketers. And I feel like social media in B2B has now become way more important, or at least way more emphasis on it than ever before. And I don't think I feel like social media in B2B people cared about, but it was kind of an afterthought. And now I feel like brand and social is like a huge differentiator for a lot of these companies because products and websites can be replicated so quickly and copy can be replicated so quickly with AI. So everyone's like, where do we differentiate? And social is just such an obvious one, right? It's almost impossible to replicate somebody's brand or the people behind those brands. So the question that I have for you is let's start with your most recent, one of the companies you worked with in the past, Apollo, who's actually one of our customers today. When you were working with them, I feel like they're very ahead of the game, at least in social.
Yeah.
What was some of the things you remember from working at Apollo that you enjoyed? And what were some of the highlights?
I mean, I have great memories of my time at Apollo, especially because when I joined, it was a very exciting time where they were actually investing in marketing and brand. And that was a great moment because we took what they already had a great product and they already had some people organically talking about Apollo. But when we came in at that time, it was like we started the conversation with them, with the customers and with people that already love the product. And that was like such a differentiator because when the company decided to stay away from all this, B2B seriousness and all, that, people seem to associate. I know many people say this, but it's also true. It's said a lot because it's true. B2B is boring or doesn't need to be boring. It really doesn't need to be boring. And I think that's exactly what made Apollo so different back in the day. And still they're doing a great job still, but back in the day when when it was right before unicorn status, that's when I was working there. Like we kind of turned what was already the attention they got because they had a good product into something greater, where even people who weren't using Apollo started learning about it. Even if they didn't use it, they were recommending it because they were hearing so much about it. And it all goes back to this, what I call community marketing. It is like the connection between go to your trusted circles, which is like your customers, your partners, the people around your employees. When you activate all those people with like people inside and human approach, it really goes a long way when it comes especially to the B2B industry. And to your point before of social is now more important than ever, I think it's because of that, exactly what you said. Right now with AI, you can replicate so many things so fast that you need to find what makes business the core of business, which is human relationships, because the rest you can have it so fast, right? So you need to go back to the human approach to it, and how we humans connect is in communities. And social media was created for that, for networking, for community, to create a place for communities. So I think that's why social media became such an important thing, and such a, it's like I would say stable stakes. It used to be like, oh, it's a nice to have maybe, and a few years ago it started being like, oh, it's really a competitive advantage. But right now it's table stakes, and you need to do it right, because there are a lot of people doing social media right now, but I think that,
That's exactly where I'm going with this. Like, you're in the weeds every day working with these smaller stage startup companies, starting out with their social media plans and strategies. What are some of the pitfalls? Where do you see people go wrong when they try think about social? I'm sure there's a bunch that come to mind, but like, what are some of the things we're, heads of marketing listening to this podcast right now, they're trying to figure out social. It's an ongoing moving target. Talk to us through like the top three biggest challenges or biggest mistakes that companies make when they invest in social?
yeah, I think the number one right now is when you have people in leadership who really believe that the social media strategy can be replaced by AI. That's one of, I would say, is
Mm.
public enemy right now. Because, for example, the thing that we're seeing on LinkedIn right now with the AI slop is really, it shows that LinkedIn listened to people. People were not paying attention to posts because they assumed they were AI, right? So people stop, companies respond to user behavior and at the market. So people were not paying attention to what was being said because there was a presumption of it being AI. So they decided to change that, and now they have this button where you can like basically report to the LinkedIn police. And I've seen in the last 3 weeks, I've seen a little change. Unlike now, I see more posts that I'm like, no, it doesn't seem like it was made by AI. And it seems like the behavior is
Mm.
starting changing. Why? Because I think we already know. And when we see something that's fake, or we kind of think, okay, this was built with AI, we kind of reject it a little bit. As I've been saying this for many years, but not about AI. I've been saying this about like things that seem inauthentic. Like when
Yeah.
you know, the same is happening with the influencer industry. It's like when you know that something was paid, you go like, I don't know, maybe not. I think that's the same happening with AI and social media. Social media is a place that where people really want to connect, and that's the thing. When you go into social media, the basics of social media has always been like, you educate, you entertain, you inform, right? So if you are not getting that because it's easy to just get it from the GPT, in social media you want more of the authentic thing, the human approach. So that's the first thing I would say. When you're thinking of social media, think about how to make it authentic, how to make it human. And the best way to
Yeah.
do that is obviously put the humans in front of everyone, whether it is your customers, your employees, your founder. And that's, I would say, that's the second recommendation that I would give. Activate your different channels, because right now, company pages are important. I still think they are very important. They are the official place. But when it comes to activating your founders, your executive, and your entire team, that's so much, that brings so much value because people trust people.
It's interesting. Authenticity in content is so important, right? The challenge with AI is that people are always going to use AI and tools to speed up the process of creating content because it just takes a lot of effort and time, for you to do it without AI. How do you make sure that your employees can create content consistently that doesn't feel like AI? How do you recommend and suggest there's like a threshold of like, you allow your employees to post content online, great. How do you make sure that it's not AI slop and that they're using AI the right way so they're not spending 2 hours of their day writing a post on LinkedIn and then
Yeah.
clicking send and getting 0 likes? It's like, this was a waste of time. So the question to you is like, how do you get people to create content that are employee advocacy? How do you get them to do it consistently and do it well and do it authentically without spending their whole day doing it?
Yeah. I think the first thing that when I get this question from my founders, I always tell them the first thing is that you need to go and identify if they understand the value of this. The value for them. It needs to be a win-win situation. It doesn't need to be like, okay, did you do this for the company? No, no, no. You can build a personal brand and it can give you so many opportunities, right? I've had employees in other companies when I was running employee advocacy programs that have had great opportunities to like go to other companies and have better jobs and opportunities because they built a personal brand. So you don't need to, as a company, you don't need to be afraid of that. Because if your employees are building something that they believe is going to benefit them too, then that's a place where you can win. Obviously, there's still some, like I said, there's still some concerns from some founders, but you need to give them the freedom to do those things,
I love
and
that.
you will see
Yeah.
the benefits. That's the major thing. The second thing is how they start building this. I call it the criteria. We all need to have that because we have AI. Like you said, it makes it so much easier. It saves up so much time, but you need to have the criteria because right now we're being paid to think. If you think
Mm.
about it, we can build the systems using AI, but we're built to think about what, from my human experience, from what I see, is what I can apply from all of this that I'm getting from AI. When I get a post created by ChatGPT, for example, I go like, I can make this better. How do I know that I can make this better? Because I have the experience, because I've seen it, because I know what will work. So it's needed the criteria. How do you build that in your team? I always say the first thing, workshops. You show them how they're going to be benefited by posting about the company or posting about what they like. And then you show them, okay, this is how you can create a system and build the criteria to start doing it. So
Mm.
I don't believe in companies that make it mandatory, like, oh, you post about, or they give them the copy and just like copy paste this on your, no, or repost. No, I believe that you go and identify the people that will want to keep posting because they understand the benefits, and then you help them as the
Yeah,
social
I love that.
media, person in the company or whatever. You just give them the tools to keep doing it.
It's harder to get like the engineers to want to create
I
content, to publish
know.
content. It's just very natural that they don't want to do that, right? And some do actually. I have an engineer in my team that wants to write a newsletter and wants to create more content. So maybe he's a unicorn. So content marketing in general, content marketing has become, obviously, in my opinion at least, even more important than it used to, right? Because people are learning about products in different ways. LLMs are referencing content and they're increasing the visibility of that brand because people are finding out through those LLMs about products because the content is being referenced, right? So when you think about content marketing, let's walk through it. Like, where do you start?
I think when it comes to content marketing, the most important thing right now for me is when you showcase how you're better than the others without saying it. So I
Tell
just
me
think
more.
that when it comes to the approach to the content, it needs to be more in like on the nose of, because you mentioned the LLMs, right? They're capturing that when you make comparisons on them. So I think that the most important part is when you showcase, again, the authenticity, the uniqueness of your product in front of everyone else. And from then on, there are many other strategies that I really like. I love when, companies post about their employees, or when they have employees creating posts, when it's like the engineer at Apollo. You mentioned that I worked there. So at Apollo, we had this newsletter with the engineers. You just mentioned that. And that was like really cool because other
Mm,
engineers wanted to learn about it. And then people who are not engineers were like, okay, this is different. We don't see this as often. So I think including when it comes to content in general, whether it's for social media or, posts or, educational, it needs to go back to your uniqueness, and it really needs to again showcase the humans behind it, because that's what we have left right now. We've said
mm.
that the AI can help you with so many things, but now there's something that they cannot replace.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The space that you're in right now, selling to smaller stage companies, I would love to like dive more into that. What should you outsource and what should you keep in-house when you think about growing your business, right? People are growing their business that are founders that are strapped and they're trying to like, what do I control? What do I not control? Sometimes they might not want to hire an external consultant to do social media because they might be concerned or worried that should be in-house, or the reverse. Sometimes they're like, you know what, we don't need anyone. We're going to outsource it to an offshore team, and then they get, they pay, let's call it like less than they should, and they end up getting a bad product. So
Yeah.
when you help companies, what are you helping them out with? What size of companies do you typically help out with, and where do you start?
When I get the question of like, for example, I had this founder who doesn't have a marketing team. So he was doing everything by himself, and he was not doing a terrible job. But when he asked me who should be my first hire, he was like, should it be like someone like you who does social? And I was like, I don't think that should be the first decision. I actually think it needs to be someone who's more of a, if you can call it a generalist, but someone who understands a little bit, like a mini head of marketing or mini CMO who understands a little bit of everything, right? Because right now you need to start thinking about which, it really depends on the company, what they do. It's not like a same thing for everyone, but I think you need to start with someone who understands a little bit of everything. And then when it comes to like the social media part, I think the earlier you start having a social media strategy, the better for your company, because then you have a foundation and then you start growing. As your company grow, your social media presence keeps growing and growing. And that's really very valuable, because the other thing that you start doing there is like building in public. It's like, oh, I know about this company from the early, and that kind of becomes
Hmm.
something that people relate to. So that's what I would say. I would say that if you can focus on social media and it makes sense for your product, maybe yes, very early. But if not, I would like think about a general role who understands a little bit of everything. Growth,
You know,
content.
I launched this podcast at the start of this year with this idea that I get to speak with amazing marketeers all the time. And I'm like, the conversations that we have are so interesting and insightful. Let me go create content so I can publish online of these stories that were told. But what I didn't realize is actually I get to ask the questions to people like yourselves that I get to learn from. So when I ask you a question of like, when should somebody hire a marketing person? It's because I'm actually in that space right now. I've got a team of 6 people. I've not hired my marketing lead. I
Oh,
actually should have hired somebody a while ago. So we should definitely chat once we finish up this call. Let's move to community marketing because this is something that I think a lot of marketeers get excited about, but concerned or worried about because they're like, that's going to take so much energy and
yes.
time to create a community, activate the community, get it to like actually start to work by itself. I haven't done it in the past because for those exact reasons. When should somebody start a community and how do you think, what are some of the best practices about starting a community and what are some of the things you should steer away from?
I think the main thing is that it is not the same to build a community than to do community marketing practices. What do I mean by this? Community marketing practices are like basically going to any place where you can build a community, whether it is social media with your customer base or create an independent community and start, activating those channels as places where different conversations about your product will be happening, right?
Mm.
So I would say that when it comes to starting a community, if you're thinking particularly on like an independent community, most people refer to that part. I think that when it comes to that, you need to make sure that you are giving them something. That's the tricky thing about a community, I think, is that yeah, it takes time because first you give and then there's a point where you can ask for things. I think that's the first thing. When you have a bunch of people or a group of people that have things in common and will be willingly in a place exchanging information that in the end will also be convenient for you. But the first thing, if you're building a community, think about how you can be helpful. And this is the same advice I give to people starting personal brand or starting anything online. It's like be helpful and then the results will come. But again, it takes time, obviously, for companies to take resources. But yeah, I would say that's the beginning of it.
That's so interesting. The first thing you said, which I want to come back to, is like learning where the conversations are happening and engaging on those conversations and being part of the community that's a broader community, not a community that you own, right? And
Yes.
actually, that's such an interesting take because, again, like you're right. Like the first thing I think about when I think community is like, oh no, I have to go create this whole group and a Slack channel or this community, and then I have to keep it active. You're actually saying, forget all of that, right? Let's start with where the conversation's happening and let's enter the chat.
Yes. Yes. I do. I say
Mm.
that it's not the same. Community marketing practices is like, for example, you can join a community and maybe that's part of the agreement that you join the community and there are some conversations that are going to be about your company and you're going to be there answering those questions, right? Or maybe you join Reddit. I don't know. Maybe you go on social
Mm.
media and instead of just posting from the company account, you are, in all these other communities or, groups of people that are talking about things that are related to your product that are in the same orbit. That's when the difference between like a community and community marketing. So I would say that
Any communities that you recommend? I have one in mind, and I don't want to share it yet. I want to hear from you. But is there any communities that you recommend that I should go join that are marketing focused communities?
well, I mean, I get, I don't know, maybe everyone knows about this one, right? Exit 5 is one of my
Yeah, that's
favorites.
the one I thought about. Yeah, that's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the go
I
to.
think they're doing very well, and I heard they are sold out for their event next month. So
Yeah,
really
yeah.
cool.
I actually read one of the only newsletters that I read is Dave
Me too.
Hart's newsletter. So I need to go join Exit 5. It's on my to-do list. I have this Notion page that has like in progress. No, it's like to do in progress done. And join Exit 5 has been in
It's
progress.
one of
So
them.
maybe this is like the kicker that I need to just move it to done and just go bite the bullet and join. Nice. Well, I think where else could we go? I feel like social today, when you're thinking about different social channels, and I'm sure maybe you can tell me, but like different types of companies, at least on your LinkedIn, it says you work with B2B focused companies. What are the channels outside of LinkedIn that you think social is important? And what are the things you're recommending and suggesting?
I think This is a very important question because most people only think about LinkedIn when it comes to B2B. And the truth is that it really depends on the product. The first thing you need to think about when you're building a social media strategy is, where does my ICP hang out? That's the first question. It's not going to be the same if you're selling to engineers as if you're selling to designers. It's not the
Mm.
same. Those are not the same places. You know, the engineer probably prefers Reddit, probably prefers YouTube, but the designer maybe might go to other more visual places. So it really depends. But I would say that I've seen great results in, well, in all of them basically. But it really depends on the company. I've seen great results on TikTok. I've seen great results on Instagram. I've seen, great Reddit strategies that are happening too right now. And, the revival of X recently. Those things
What
are
about like
really depends.
what about measuring results, right? So, and let's like move up the tier a little bit. Let's say we're a company of 100 employees. There's a CMO and there's a small marketing team in place, and this marketeer. And I'm speaking to the people listening to this right now, right? They're thinking about social and they're trying to justify a certain budget being spent on social, or effort and time being spent on social. What do you think is some of the measurement criteria? Like, how do you measure a good social strategy? Like, other than brand recall, like brand recognition, like there's things like that's important, and let's factor those in.
Yeah.
But overall, when you're speaking to the CMO is speaking to the CFO, and they're like, social's really working. This person we hired is killing it right now. What are you measuring KPIs, and how do you measure success, and what are the things that people should be thinking about?
This is one of the big questions when it comes to social media, attribution. We know that it's a very tricky thing for social media. It's a very tricky thing nowadays, especially for the way things are done, right? You don't see a post on LinkedIn about a company or a product and you immediately just click and buy, right? You don't do that. You probably click and follow, click, and then you see another post where you see them company mentioned again and you get curious. And then, it really takes time, right? But that's the type of recognition that actually lasts, because it's happened to me. Sometimes I see an ad on Instagram and I buy, and I don't even know the name of the company I bought from. I don't remember. But when it comes to like B2B and I see a company and I go like, okay, I've seen this, and then I go, I've seen this, and I start like, I have that recognition. So you really want that. When it comes to the results, my favorite way to know I'm doing my job is when I get from the sales team, like, people are telling us they hear about us from social media. It's like that's it right
Right,
there.
right. I saw something recently where companies are now taking the gong calls or whatever sales recording calls that they have. They're taking those transcriptions and they're running an agent, and it says, tell me how many times a company or a prospect has mentioned a social media post or an influencer or an employee posts, and like pull that data out, extract it, and create reporting on it. So I think
Yes.
because, at least in sales-led products now, there's this data capture and this ability to analyze that data at scale. There's ways that you can insert keyword searches and say, have they talked about this? And that is a great way
Yes.
to
Also the
visualize and
survey,
get
right? When you onboard
Mm.
someone and you ask them, where did you hear about us? That's a great one. And I'm telling you that when you take the community marketing approach, this really works. At Chili Piper, there was a point where we had, I think it was over 70% of people, of close ones, saying, we hear of you through social media.
Wow. Yeah, Chili Piper. I mean, you worked at Chili Piper and it's just such a great brand. And I have so
Oh,
much
I love it.
respect for the brand that they've created. Talk us through any of the roles that you had in the past at some of the most impressive companies. Any campaigns that come to mind that you were like really proud about, that you just knocked it out of the park, that maybe took a risk and it was just like worked really well? Anything come to mind?
I think, I mean, I always say I have big, great brand. It's a great company. I really love Chili Piper. And the thing is that Chili Piper has a couple of great founders who understand that taking risk is how you get to
Yeah,
places. And
agreed.
that was something that really happened at Chili Piper when I was there. I think the main thing that I remember about like this, the risk, if you want to call it that, because we were like very confident that it would work, was exactly the employee advocacy program. You see, Chili Piper has a lot of employees still to this day who are active on social media. And I think it really came down from the founder saying, like, this is something we want to do. This is something you can support. And this is something that's going to be, again, beneficial to you too. And I think that was at the time, I'm talking, this is 5 years ago. So at the time,
Yeah.
it was kind of like not everyone was doing it. So that was a huge competitive advantage. And when it comes to specific campaigns, I don't know, at Chili Piper, we did the top marketers, top 32 marketers, and it was insane the amount of people voting and nominating great marketers. And we learned about all these marketers. And then they were like asking their followers to vote for them. It was insane. We had millions and millions of impressions during those months. It was very
You,
crazy. It was a
you
great
must
one.
you must have been one of the first companies to do that type of campaign, because I have seen more and more companies do that now. I constantly see LinkedIn posts of really reputable people saying that they're now on a Times Square billboard because they're part of the top 25,
Yes.
marketeers or whatever. And then it says like underneath sponsored by X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, such a genius move. I feel like,
Yeah.
Chili Piper probably pioneered that.
I don't know if they were the first one, but definitely we did it aggressively. You can say that. And it did very well in B2B at least. And the other thing that I would say Chili Piper was a pioneer was in this like showcasing the employees. We had something that we called the employee takeover, where basically we had an employee writing a post for the company page and everyone would go crazy because they wanted to know more about the employee, what they do. And we even did that for like launches. It was like the engineer that built the product was taking on social media to explain why we built that product. It was like really cool. And again, it goes back to like community marketing practices where we highlight the people, whether it is the people in the company, the people leading the company, or the people that are buying the product.
I have an ask for you, if that's okay. At the end of this, if you don't mind sharing with me your product and your service, because I'll definitely share it internally, because I'm thinking about marketing and more, and I need somebody with a bit more experience than I have and somebody to take over the reins. So definitely send me an email and we'll have a conversation offline. For people that are listening to this, where do they find out about you? And, tell us a little bit more about where they should go.
I mean, to connect with me, find me on LinkedIn. That's the fastest way today. I'm all day in there. I'm creating content and I'm connecting with people and learning. One thing I hear a lot of people on LinkedIn like, oh, I don't like LinkedIn, blah, blah, blah. I love it. That's my thing. I just love to be there, love to like learn from new people. Hit me on my DMs, ask me questions. I'm not charging for that. I love like learning about companies' problems and if I can help you fix them.
That's awesome. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for joining us. I
Thank
will
you.
let you know when it goes live, and we'll have you on again soon.
Well, thank you, David. It was really cool talking to you.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Safe Doesn't Scale on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Limelight is the leading AI-powered B2B influencer marketplace and social signals platform. Brands like HubSpot, Webflow, and ZoomInfo use Limelight to power influencer programs at scale. Start your first campaign at limelighthq.com.